This is Murali. Welcome back to channel. In this video, we are discussing about control statements. We are discussing about control statements in C language. What are the different control statements we have for controlling the program? First, we can see what is the definition for the control statements. Here the control statements can be used for to enable the users for executing a particular block of code. Means you have to enable the users to execute a particular block of statement, a block of code. Okay, is how the conditionally, based on the conditions, right, we can executing a particular block of statements called as control statements. Simply we can say what is meant by control statement means, right, we have to control, right, the flow of execution, control the flow of execution, that is the need of control statements. Means while you are writing the some instructions, those instructions when you have to executing, but that is the particular instruction will be executing depending on the conditions. Based on the conditions, we can executing a particular block of statements, a particular block of code is called as a control statements. Right? Here mainly we have the three types of control statements. Here we have mainly three types of control statements. See what are those? The first one is conditional control statements. Conditional control statements are structure. Right? Second one, unconditional control statement. Right? And the third one is looping statements or loop control statements. Loop control statement. Clear? What is meant by control statement means we can control the flow of execution. You control the particular block of statements when they want to execute. That is depending on the conditions. That's why it's called as a control statements. Now what are the different types of control statements we have? Here conditional control statements, right? Unconditional control statements and looping statements. Just briefly see what is meant by conditional, what is meant by unconditional, what is meant by looping control statements. Here conditional control statement means based on the some conditions, we can select a block of statements. Based on the conditions, we can select a block of statements, and that is those type of statement is called as a conditional control statements. Means depending on the conditions, we can executing a particular block of statements. Those then conditional control statements also called as a decision making statements or decision statements. Means you can take the some decision depending on the condition, either which block of statements you want to executing. We can say the control statement is also called as a decision statements. Right? Now what is meant by unconditional? By name itself there is a meaning. There is a unconditional. Unconditional means without any conditions, without checking the any conditions. If we can control the flow of execution without any conditions, if we can control the flow of execution, right, those type of statement is called as a unconditional control statements. Whereas in here, based on the conditions, we can control the flow of execution. Whereas in unconditional control statements, without any conditions, we can control the flow of execution. Sometimes these statements are also called as a jumping statements. The unconditional control statement is also called as a jumping statement, right? And then see next one, looping statements. What is meant by looping, or we can also call it iteration. Iteration, we can also call it as a iteration. Means what is the need of loop control statements? By using the loop control statements, we can repeat a particular block of statements. A particular block of statements we can repeat for the n number of times. Means a particular statements can want to repeat for the n number of times. Means loop, we can repeat the n number of times. Those type of statement is called as a loop control statements. Clear? What's meant by control statement means we can control the flow of execution. How we can control the flow of execution means by using the conditional or without any conditions, or by using the looping method. Conditional means based on the conditions we have to control some flow of the execution, right? Unconditional means without checking the any conditions, or we can take any decision. Based on that we can control the flow of execution. That is called as a unconditional control statements. Then loop or iteration means, suppose if you want to execute a particular block of statements, want to repeat it for the n number of times, that time we can using the looping statements. Now what are the different conditional control statements we have? First we can see one by one. The first conditional control statement is simple if. Simple if and if else. Nested if else and else if ladder, and last one is switch. Okay. These are called as conditional control statements. Based on the some conditions we can control the flow of execution, or we can execute a particular block of statements, right? Now what are the unconditional control statements? The unconditional control statements are go to, break and continue. These three are the unconditional, means without checking the any conditions it will be control the flow of execution of a particular program. And what are the looping statements? The looping statements are while, do while and for. These three are the looping statements. Clear? Okay, now by using these control statements we have to control the entire program. Okay, now we can see one by one what are the conditional statements. We can see the one by one.